After Paul leaves Corinth and begins to sail home to Antioch, he decides he's going to stop one more time trying to make it into Asia Minor, but he's just going to stop in one city, and that's Ephesus. And he spends a little bit of time there. Now, in Ephesus, something happens that has not happened to Paul on his other journeys. He starts in the synagogue and he preaches the message of Jesus Christ and how Jesus is the hope of Israel, the Messiah that they had been waiting for. And then after that, he goes out into the marketplaces and he begins to interact with the Greek-speaking Gentile residents of the city. But a bunch of people began to believe his message and began to congeal together into a true community of Jesus followers there. And we began to see that the impact of this ministry and of the conversions that are happening there in the city is so strong that the local economy is actually affected. And so during this time, that for Paul's very first time in Ephesus, we'll see in the next video that he goes back there and we think that something happens that's not really recorded or we're not really given much news about. But in this journey, we see that the silversmiths actually come to the courts and begin to make accusations about Paul and his group and the companions that are with him, because they're fearful that the people who are converting to this new religion, this new way of thinking, were going to stop buying the silver idols of Artemis that made up their entire existence and ability to make an income. And so they pull some of Paul's companions into this court, and a big riot ensues. Crowds begin to form, and they begin to shout and scream in great pride for the city of Ephesus. Great is Artemis of the Ephesians, because it was there that there was a giant temple to the goddess Artemis. And so most of the silversmiths were making idols, little silver idols of Artemis that they would have been selling in the temple market. And so they were screaming with pride, great is Artemis of the Ephesians, great is Artemis of the Ephesians. And there's a ton of confusion about what's going on. And it seems like the proconsul there doesn't even know how to handle the situation. Eventually they quiet the riot down and they're able to kind of release the prisoners, not finding any charges that are rightful against them. And everything seems to calm down. But we see in this story that Paul, for the first time, experiences such great success in a city in the preaching of the message that it actually has an impact on the city's economics, the economy of Ephesus. Now, Paul's message, we haven't talked much about it up until this point, but I wanted to make a little point about Paul's message. Paul, as he goes around the Greek-speaking world and he preaches this gospel, it is a very Jewish message. It is not like anything within the Greek philosophical way of thinking. It is much, much influenced by Paul's Judaism and by the fact that he still sees himself as a faithful Jewish follower of the God of Israel, who has revealed himself in the final hope that he's given to Israel in Jesus Christ. But as he moves around the Roman world and he preaches this gospel, or in the Greek would have been euangelion, good news or good message about the person Jesus, and he calls Jesus Kyrios in the Greek, or Lord, and he calls him Soter, or Savior. These are all words that were used in the emperor cult to describe the Roman emperor. Now, all of these words were used to hold up the authority of Rome and to hold up that the pantheon of gods of the Roman pagan temple structure had chosen this emperor, this Caesar, to rule over the empire. And so to preach a message that there is a different Savior, different Soter, that there is a different Lord, there's a different Kyrios, and that there is a new euangelion, new good message, new gospel that the people should be paying attention to and following, is incredibly anti-imperial. This message is one that totally undermines the Roman Empire and is a very dangerous message. And the success that he has in Ephesus and people coming to understand this message and choosing to believe and follow Jesus shows us the kind of danger it is to the Roman Empire, as the response of those whose whole livelihood is wrapped up in the authority of the Roman system begin to rise up and actually riot in response to Paul's message. This is the kind of message that Paul's carrying around with him everywhere, and why in most places he's met with physical opposition and oftentimes beatings, imprisonings, that all in an attempt to stop him from this message of undermining of the Roman system and the Roman government.